Okay, welcome to the American Liberties Call. Tonight we have what I want to call a special guest, Paul Hansen. He's a Sixth Amendment counsel. He's not a bar attorney. And just to find out his legal background and everything when he comes on, I'm going to have him give us his background. But anything that you hear on this call is not to be taken as legal advice or something. It's just something that we probably, many of us, would do, fighting the corruption that we're faced with. And if you don't think this country is run by corrupt people, look at Congress, look at the judicial system, look at what's going on to President Trump, and I call him respectfully President Trump. And and there's people even want to argue with that, and that's fine. Arguments are for fools. I don't argue. I respect the man. The man has plenty of money. He didn't need to do this, but he felt the need because he loves his country just as much as I do, you do. Now, we may not like the way the country is running and being run, but we do love the foundation of what this country was meant to be, uh, and that's important. So, with that being said, I'm going to see if I believe this is him on the phone. I'm asking you to unmute, and by golly, I'm not sure how to unmute yourself. Uh, do you hit *6 or something? Um, does anybody know how to unmute yourself in the phone? Please do it. Yeah, let me. Okay, go ahead. Somebody say something?
Usually it's *6.
Okay.
Okay, I just did *6. Paul Hansen here.
Okay, great. Paul, I got your website on. You're not looking at the computer, but I got your website up, and before the call, I was scrolling through, 2011, 2012, and looking at a lot of the stuff that you had added. And I'd like to come back to this, but first, I'd like to have you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit on your background, your legal background, if you have one, or your, where you get your education from and all. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. If I have a fan running in my background, if it's making some background noise, tell me and I'll turn it off. But it's just warm where I'm at.
I don't hear it.
Anyway, you do not hear it?
No, I do not.
Okay. Yeah, I think in around the year 2000, somebody talked to me about the tax code, and I called him crazy, and it got me thinking, and I just started studying. And the government, I owned 28 houses and 50 rental units, and the government started attacking me because I was one of these children that would ask why whenever they told me to do something. And basically, I just learned. I got a great interest in law because I knew that when the municipal code authorities in Omaha, Nebraska started ganging up on me and basically decided to destroy me just for fun, that I knew that was absolutely unconstitutional and there was something wrong here. And it took me a long time to figure out how to stop them. And I got to the point to where the head prosecutor and the second prosecutor of the largest county in Nebraska resigned from their job when I subpoenaed them to court. So they basically, I used the court system to give them judicial notice of the parameters of their law territorially, and also the value of the requirement for the Fourth Amendment sworn statement before they could prosecute somebody. And they decided they didn't want to face me, and they resigned from their job. The head prosecutor was in in office 19 years. The other guy under him was 13 years. And they, when I subpoenaed them into court, one of the attorneys for the county stood up and said he resigned from his job, so he's not going to be coming in to testify today. And the sheriff came up to me later on, and he just couldn't believe it. He said, "What in the world are you doing to cause these guys to drop? They're dropping like flies." And you got to remember, they attacked me for probably 5 years and cost me almost $3.5 million. So it was a big deal. But that got me inspired into studying the law. I learned a lot from an individual called Ed Shell. Probably some of the people that you work with might recognize that name. He graduated from law school out of Michigan and was pretty close to the top of his class and beat the IRS over 50 times. Basically, his main position was keep the burden of proof on the IRS agent who claims that you're required to keep a record for tax purposes, to file for tax purposes, and to pay some money over to the United States of America through the IRS system collection. So he got me basically pointed in the right direction as far as application of law. And from that point, I guess I'm pretty adapted, pretty skilled. Maybe God gives this to certain people of looking at the big picture and understanding the principles of the law and staying on that track and applying them in today's system. The number one thing that we have going for us right today is the Bill of Rights. And if you know how to use those, you can force them to produce evidence of administrative authority over you or over the property that's involved. And that basically takes the burden off you and pushes it on them. And those guys do not want to come into court and swear to evidence of administrative authority, even though they're required to, if they're coming against you. So they dismiss their cases or they resign from their jobs. So anybody want to ask any questions real quick? And then it'll help me I've got so many. I've been in court probably 300-400 times. I'm one of these people that believe that go ahead and use the traffic situations to learn how to be comfortable in court, and then you can step up to the higher level cases.
Yeah, we do have a question here.
Okay, go ahead.
Let me see who it is. And yeah, that's what I did. I used to practice in traffic court and had a lot of fun. Okay, let me, okay, you can unmute yourself.
I am unmuted.
Yep.
And I'm learning how to get a land patent. And a friend of mine has one, and then she got evicted from her place. And I was just trying to make it so that doesn't happen. Do you have any information about that?
What do you mean when she got evicted? She got evicted from property that she owned, or she was renting, or?
Oh, she owned and she had a land patent on it. And they came in with a SWAT team and evicted her.
Yes, there was I come across an individual. He contacted me, probably found me on my website, and he actually ran for governor in Colorado, and he had a piece of land that he did have evidence of a land patent on it, and the bank came against him and tried to move him off the property. He was a pretty sharp guy. He ran for governor and got quite a few votes, I guess, but never won. But anyway, the last thing that happened is that they actually came onto his property, and he didn't even tell me how much the land was worth. It wasn't worth a tremendous amount, maybe 10 or 20,000. I'm just guessing, and had a few buildings on it. And he said the bank, after getting his arguments about the right to own the property and basically the limitations of the United States, they came onto his land when he wasn't there, and they took every shed, every fence post, every bush, absolutely cleared the land flat, and never did take the land.
Wow.
So it was a tremendous victory for him. And he did. What he learned is that they could not take the land. They could only take the produce off the land. And he says the stuff they took was worthless. He just did it to make it feel like they got something. But a land patent, all a land patent is evidence that the United States had possession of land at one time in history, and they sold it. That's all a land patent is. It does have value, but it's not a tremendous value. But every time we go and challenge property taxes, we always go after the land patent. Walmart, for example, they always buy land with land patents because they do not want to build a big development and find out they don't have clear title piece of land in the middle of their building. So that's what one legal individual, a lawyer, told a friend of mine, that Walmart makes sure they only buy land with land patents, or else they get special insurance to cover that.
So, Paul, is
But
there
yes,
a
you
remedy
can,
for this person that got evicted off of her land patent property?
It's very possible. I would definitely run the paperwork that we have. We don't charge very much for it. Now, if we win, we generally get a third of the proceeds, and we definitely go for damages so they don't, the person shouldn't have to win a case and then give their land all to the legal people that help them. But we go for a third of the damages and the returned property, which is a whole lot better than nothing. But hopefully the damages will be enough to where they'll actually come out ahead. But yes, cannot win the case judicially, but you can win it administratively as a matter of law, because they are limited to which land in America they can take. They cannot take private land administratively. They can take United States land administratively. The administrative land portion of America is 25%. 25% of America land, most of it's between Canada and Mexico, is 25% of that is actually owned by the United States of America. Absolutely the same style as it's written in the Articles of Confederation. And that's the only time I've ever found ownership written in upper and lower case in the records. And it's written exactly as the Articles of Confederation requires for the Union description of the United States of America. But if it is land, the United States of America land is a military purpose, and yes, they can administratively take it and govern it pursuant to the Constitution and all the laws of the United States. But if it's not of that land, they can't, as far as I perceive, they cannot take it. They can only take the produce off of it to pay for a debt. And in common law, generally you can convince the jury that God's word does not allow anybody to displace people off of land.
Well, when you read all mortgages, it says that you're the tenant, right?
Well, the problem with mortgages is that they probably entered into the situation claiming interest in the property through Federal Reserve notes, and Federal Reserve notes, Congress has never given permission to do that. So Congress has never given permission for banks to go out and use that to make mortgages with. So and that's why a bank never comes into court. They always send a debt collector in that's purchased the debt on these things. But anyway, they don't want to show up in court and have to confess that they didn't give the substantive money for interest in the land that they're relying upon to take the land. because
Right.
the jury will get very upset when they find out that they pushed a button, generated Federal Reserve credits electronically, ended up taking your land based on that, when you and I can't do that to anybody else. And how in the world can the sovereigns of the land not do it, and the government can do it? It's impossible.
Right. Okay, we got another question here. May Michael. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
How's everybody doing tonight?
Good, good.
This is May. I have a question. What I may have missed it in the beginning. What type of attorney are you?
Well, you don't have to call them dirty names.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I'm only kidding. I'm only kidding. No, Paul is not. Paul, are you still on with us? Uh-oh. It looks like Paul may have dropped out. Paul is not an attorney.
So he's
Okay.
not a member of the bar?
No, he's not a member of the
Okay,
bar.
you
He's
can hear me
a.
now for some reason.
Okay, you there?
Can you hear me
Okay.
now? Yeah.
Okay, Paul.
No,
She wanted to know what kind of attorney you were.
Right. So I've never desired to get a bar license. I've been offered to get a bar license. I was speaking in the legislature of the state of Nebraska, and after they heard my speech, I was the only guy that got a standing ovation, and the judges got very upset about that, or the Congress got very upset about that, because you're not supposed to stand up and give anybody an applause. But I did have a bar company came up to me, and they said they would sponsor me if they wanted me to become an attorney, because that's how they control you. But
Okay.
I am just a Sixth Amendment counsel, and I can do everything that's necessary to make sure your rights are not violated by the United States.
So, well, my next question was, were you able to service people in other states?
What we do, you never want to get yourself in a position to where you have oral arguments in court. We do all our paperwork by briefs and motions and challenges, and there's no reason for any of our clients to ever speak in court. The only time they generally speak in court, of course, if they're subpoenaed to testify, or all they do is say, Your Honor, please look at our written arguments, our 21-page written arguments, and I stand on my paperwork. That you don't want to get into an oral argument in court. You want to do it all by paperwork, and ideally, you want to win your case by as a matter of law, where they're notice of the law, they find out they can't do what they're doing, and they go away. And most of their violations can be won under a matter of law. So the judge cannot put it in front of a jury. He has to dismiss.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Most of the time they lack personal jurisdiction and territorial jurisdiction and subject matter jurisdiction. So they miss all three. If they just miss one of them, the court is in want of jurisdiction. They cannot proceed as a matter of law.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. And okay, Chessman, I've lowered your hand. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hi there, Paul.
Hi,
Thanks
how you doing?
All right.
Can you hear us? Hear me okay?
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, awesome. Hey, quick question. So I've been talking to lots of people about that IRS having to require people to file. Do you have to change your status to be a state citizen or file a revocation of election to do what you were able to do?
No, if you're putting a document in for recession, I think that's what the word is. Basically withdraw from their system. That's giving them evidence that you were in their system at one time. The only way you can be in their system is with full disclosure, and you have to be eligible and qualify for basically membership. All relationships with the United States are contractual, and the only way you can contract with them is with the meeting of the minds, and there's no reason to correct your status. What we do is we basically, let's just say almost every document that they come after you with, they'll say that you're a resident of the state of Nebraska, for example, county of Douglas County, and city of Omaha, Nebraska. So all those terms are a federal zone. They don't want you to know that, but we just put an affidavit in stating that you never elected to be a resident or a United States citizen or live in any city, county, or state of the United States. And then that shifts the burden onto them. We never want to say we are not a United States citizen. We just put in, we have no evidence in our possession that we elected to become a United States citizen. That puts the burden of proof on them. If you say you are not a United States citizen in a U.S. court, they can turn to you and say, okay, you made a statement, prove it. So you never want to make a statement in court, and you always shift the burden of proof upon them.
With that,
Another
with that
thing
being,
is like
oh, go ahead.
residency
Go ahead.
is a big one. Like the word county. If you go to statutes at large, the word county means a federal zone. They use that term all the time to put a false premise of U.S. courts having jurisdiction over you. That would be land jurisdiction, territorial jurisdiction. But for a resident, for example, the term resident in the statutes at large means a federal person. So when they ask you if you're a resident of Douglas County, or city of, or state of Nebraska, and almost everybody will say yes, you're associated with residency and county, and you just told the court that they have jurisdiction over you. So we're very artful about that. It's extremely important to put in a affirmative defenses in an affidavit form. And generally, when you do that properly, the case goes away right up front. Even in civil suits where they sue you, you can put those arguments in, and they have to convert it to common law. And they don't do very well in common law because the jury decides all of the laws and the facts of the case, and the judge is just there simply to keep the coffee pot full and to use the U.S. system for archiving the proceedings. That help?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I have a question, since you mentioned something civil. I actually have a civil litigation against me personally from a government agency, the Commodities Future Trades Commission. I'm under a injunction right now, but the case was dismissed by the judge. The judge gave the CFTC one more chance to put an amended complaint, which they did, and we're awaiting on the judgment on the amended complaint. With that being said, even if the judge dismisses the second amended complaint, do you foresee the government going away, or do you see them probably coming back a different way?
Well, they have to list all the elements of granting the U.S. court jurisdiction, and they might have missed that in the first one. But make sure you don't miss the opportunity to answer within their given time. Otherwise, they could win the case by default. I'd have to look at the case and find out what's different from that one and the second one. They have to state their case clearly and unambiguous. Can't even pronounce that word. But
the first one was dismissed. The judge called it a shotgun pleading. And so, yeah.
But if they have, if they have jurisdiction, they have to have they have to have interaction from you, which generally they do have if you're going through the mercantile exchange or something like that. But I'd have to look at the case. So
Okay, I'll make sure. I'm sorry.
Yeah, we charge between $45 to $70, depends how busy we are, to look at cases. But we don't. It doesn't take that much time. We can read through a case in a half an hour, so and give you a response on it, which is might be worth $10,000 to you for us to spend 15 minutes with it. So,
definitely.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Chappie will make sure we get in touch. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up. I was just waiting for a good opportunity. The target to that case had died, and the rest of the people they're going after are basically were marketers. Encourage people in a network marketing deal, and I was part of it. I was one of the founding members, and there was absolutely no criminal intent at all. And in fact, the guy that died had an affidavit that he took on all the problems, but we'll talk about that later. Okay, we got Kelly. Go ahead, Kelly.
Yes, thank you, Paul, for being here. I've got questions about subject matter jurisdiction. What kind of subject matters does the court have jurisdiction over, and what kinds do they not? Or am I
the term subject matter jurisdiction means that the moving party must declare the law. Okay, the court might have jurisdiction or the ability to have jurisdiction, but when challenged, the plaintiff, the moving party, must declare the law. Now, the law includes three main things: the person, of course, that they're suing. That could be a person, a corporation, or an individual, and then the activity that they're suing about, and then the location of the activity. So the court has to receive in the pleadings addressing all three of those points: the person, the activity, and the written law that they're relying upon to address that activity, and then the location. So that's what subject matter jurisdiction means. They have to declare the law. And if you look at an IRS case, they do. They put in the case, the congressional statutes, and then they put in residency, and then they usually put in that you're a taxpayer, and then they put in internal revenue, which is money made inside government land. So we'd have to look at the case and just go through a checklist and see if they've covered all the bases. And even if they do, once they put those in the document, they still have to have somebody to testify to the truthfulness of those statements. So they might claim that you're a resident within the United States. You can find out who is the IRS agent that said that, and then you can subpoena that person into the court proceedings and tell him to produce the evidence that you're a resident as they defined in the written complaint. And then you give them the statute that defines resident, not the statute, but the statute at large that defines resident, county, and so forth, and it really boxes them in. If you make revenue internally, inland of the United States, you owe taxes on it.
right?
But most revenue is not made internally, inland of the United States. But you never want to say that. You want to keep the burden of proof on them entirely. We've never lost a case against the IRS when we kept it that way. We had one individual that just simply capitulated and told the judge that was his Social Security number. No, not Social Security number. That was his zip code and address, even though we coached him for days not to do that. And they also asked him if he was a U.S. citizen. We coached him for days how to answer that. He was an elderly guy, and he just folded and lost his case. So it's terrible. But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, so they put all these, law, persons, activity, location, and then you challenge it. You make them prove up what their statements are.
Yeah, it's a formal document. It's not a motion. You go with the challenge first, and then when they don't meet the challenge, then you motion the court to dismiss. So it's two different steps. A motion, the judge can summarily dismiss. A challenge, the judge cannot summarily dismiss. You have a right as man and kind. You have a right as man for them to meet your challenge.
Okay.
Really important to keep those two separate, because they love to dismiss those challenges when you allow them to convert it to a motion. Jurisdictional challenge. It's not a jurisdictional motion. It's a jurisdictional challenge with the motion to dismiss when the opposing party comes up short.
Okay. Thank
Okay.
you.
Okay, thank you, Kelly. Okay, we got John. John, I lowered your hand. Go ahead. Speak to me, John. John? The guy's so famous, they made a room after him. John, where are you?
You already went to the John.
There,
He's
can you
got to
hear me
unmute himself, Chris.
Okay, there he goes.
now? Okay, so here's the question I had. With respect to the passports, on our passports, it reads national/citizen. I looked up in grammar, basic English grammar, / is another way of writing the word or. How can we get the government to tell us whether or not on our passport we are considered citizens of the United States or nationals?
We have a process for that. I haven't got involved with it, but I do work with people that have, and it's not all that complicated. I think it's a waste of money to spend $1,000 or $5,000 to get a passport under a national status. It should be just $200 or $300. But anyway, that's a process we go through, and it boils down to keeping the burden of proof on them. They're supposed to receive your standing as independent from them until otherwise proven. They don't do that. They switch it around, that you're treated as a U.S. citizen until otherwise proven. That's not the default status of man. So U.S. citizenship is a contract. It's a franchise. It can only occur during full disclosure and consent. And it's not a default standing. Nobody is born a U.S. citizen. Nobody. People are born under United States governance until the age of 18, but at that moment, then they become eligible to contract with the United States, and they must do that. But otherwise, they can be treated as a United States citizen before their age of 18. At the age of when they turn 18, then they're in the contractual world, and they have to contract with the United States, and the United States has to have evidence of it. When you become a United States citizen, they film it. They got all kinds of documents. They keep records of it, and they can prove it. And that's what we force them to do. And they run like crazy from it, because they don't want anybody to know that. I fly all over the country. I never take a piece of paper with me or nothing, no ID, nothing. And every time I get on an airplane, I practice that. I just get on there and I just say I'm an American and I don't have any documents. And all the flight attendants goes, well, you're not going to get on the airplane. You should call your supervisor. I'm on the airplane 15 minutes, 20 minutes.
Wow. I got to try that when I don't have any place to go. Okay.
You know what? I did the same thing, Chappie, and they let me on the plane.
Okay, here I'm going to bring this. Okay, I got another John that wants to ask a question. And
Real,
go
real,
ahead.
real quick,
I'm gonna
real
mute
quick,
myself out.
real quick on the passport thing. The less you say, the better. The less you say, the better. You just say that you're American born and born in Nebraska and or whatever. Never say the state of, and just be quiet. They have to prove that you're required to have something else. But go ahead with the question.
I said exactly that. You're right. I said
Oh, okay. Again, I'm listening to what Paul's saying, and I just said by the grace of God, I had a great team at the time when I went in front of the grand jury, because I didn't do anything until they proved jurisdiction, which they never did, and I never heard from them again. When the judge ordered me to do something against my will, I said, under threat and duress and fear of going to jail, what else would you have me to do? And she compelled me to go in front, and do the exemplars, which are handwriting examples and so forth. And at the bottom of each page, you have to sign it, which is like an agreement. And so I signed it under threat, duress, and fear of going to jail, Chris Chapman. And the agent said, you can't do that. And I said, yeah, I can. I did it. See, look, right here. And he gets up and he goes out, he storms outside to the attorney. The DOJ said, yeah, he can do it. And so he comes back in and he says, okay, you can do it. And I said, yeah, I know. Under threat, duress, and fear of going to jail, I'm doing everything you want me to do. And they never gave them jurisdiction. And a point of interest. Go ahead.
Yeah, they seen that you were that you knew how to challenge jurisdiction at every level, and they knew that you're not going to go away. You're a formidable opponent. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, we just had a guy that, like you were saying, you coach this guy and everything. He does what he acts like he knows what to do, and then he goes to court and spills out his beans. A guy goes into court after he's been pumped up. He's there to enter a plea based upon the indictment, and the judge says, put on a mask. And he looks around, nobody else has a mask. And instead, what I would have done, I would have said, by what authority do you have to tell me to put on a mask? And but he didn't do that. He put on the mask. Once you give them jurisdiction, it is my contention, I don't know if it's true or not, and I'd like to get your opinion. When you give somebody a gift, you can't demand it back because you gave it. It's given. And so when you give them jurisdiction, it's pretty darn hard to get that turned around. Would you agree?
Well, jurisdiction is not challenged until it's challenged. So every document we file, we always put on the top of the document a disclaimer so that they cannot use it to create any form of jurisdiction. It depends on what we're doing, what kind of disclaimer goes on the top. But we challenge that throughout the case. And I was in federal court, Northern District of Florida. They were trying to give me 30 years in jail for interfering with collections of taxes. They were trying to collect, I think, $10 million from this guy. And anyway, they claimed that I was a trustee of part of the ministry, and claiming that they were prosecuting me for 30 years in jail. And during the proceedings, the prosecutor was never, ever nice to me, except one time when they had me in the witness chair, and she goes, Mr. Hansen, where'd you go to school? What'd your parents do for a living? Did you enjoy growing up in Nebraska? You're a U.S. citizen, aren't you, Mr. Hansen? And I just stared at her for like 5 or 10 seconds, and I said very carefully, very slowly, I have no evidence in my possession I ever elected to become a United States citizen. Case dismissed.
Yeah.
When I was walking out of that courtroom, the U.S. Marshal came up to me and he says, I've been here 8 years. Not one person has ever won a case against the United States that went to trial. Not one. He says, I don't know what the hell you did, but I'm impressed.
Yep. Yep. I mean, that's it. I mean, that's wow. I got goosebumps all
Yeah,
over
and
me.
then another attorney walked up and he says, I've never seen anything like this. What just happened in there? But I've done that several times. I had a traffic ticket once, and they arrested me 5 times for not showing up in court. 4 times for not showing up in court in the initial arrest of the stop. And on the 5th arrest, I said judicial notice on the 4th Amendment, and the judge kept trying to ignore me. And I said it again, he ignored me. I said it again, he ignored me. And I think it was the 4th time I said judicial notice on the 4th Amendment, now pursuant to the Bill of Rights, 1791, found in the Constitution for the United States of America. And the judge puts his hands on the desk, puts his head down, and just shakes his head like he's taking a kid taking medicine. And he says, okay, I'll take judicial notice. Now, you remember, I was driving no license, no registration, no insurance. They towed my car. This is the 4th time that I failed to show up in court, and they arrested me that day. The judge says, like, I can't let you go on your own recognizance again. You failed to show up the last 4 times you were supposed to show up. So then he takes judicial notice, and he says, take him away. So they handcuff me and take me out in the hallway. Never take me out in the hallway, but they did this time. I stood in the hallway for about 2 or 3 minutes, and then the sheriff comes out, and he says, Hansen, turn around. He took my handcuffs off. He says, I don't know what happened in there. Case dismissed.
Yep.
So they did not have a sworn statement in the record pursuant to the 4th Amendment.
Okay, John, I think you're going to have another question.
Yeah, well, no, can you hear me now?
Yep.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
so he had a bond forfeiture warrant, and if a judge allows you to go out, you're free. He's only gonna remand you to go behind him in a room. So I've seen that done once before when I was like my early time trying to study this stuff, and I didn't understand it, but I remembered it. And my
I don't know
godbrother,
what
I
you're
told you
saying.
before, my godbrother's a judge, and I talked to him about that, and he said, yeah, if he ever tells you you go outside, you're free. He can't touch you.
Oh, no, I was handcuffed and the sheriff was with me.
Right, but you went outside and then that you got uncuffed.
No,
Right.
Only after the next sheriff came out and took my handcuffs off. He says, your case has just been dismissed.
No, but what John is saying, Paul, is that when the judge told you to go outside, and then you were out.
No. They said they said take me away. They were taking me to jail.
Oh.
But usually they take me through a different door. So the
Yeah.
judge gave a special signal not to take me through that special door, take me
He
the other direction.
He doesn't want everybody else to know what just happened.
Right.
Yeah. So anyway, that sheriff came out and he says, I don't know what just happened in there. He was just like, he couldn't believe it. I've never seen anything like this before.
Pretty
I explained
good.
it to him. I says, there's no 4th Amendment sworn statement in the record to support any of the rest.
So
Next
basically, when people make claims, regardless how little the claim is, when they say I am not, that's leading into a claim. So
That's a
reverse
statement, yeah.
that and saying I have not seen any fact or evidence that and put your subject in there. Is that correct?
Yeah, I say it. I say it very simple. Let's just say, are you a resident of Douglas County? I just say I have no evidence in my possession of ever elected to become a resident of Douglas County, and that's it. I don't talk anymore.
Right.
Do you have money in the bank? I could have. There's times I got $100,000 in Federal Reserve notes in the bank, and I tell the judge, I have no evidence that I have any money in the bank. Federal Reserve note is not money. So.
Right. And would and with that being said, would you say cryptocurrency is the same as a Federal Reserve note because it's man-made?
No. Well, Mona Lisa's man-made, and if you think it's worthless, go ahead and give it to me.
Well, no, the value is perceived on the person it wants it or has it.
But the Mona Lisa is the same way.
Yeah.
To somebody growing up in a jungle somewhere, you hand them the Mona Lisa, they'd probably throw it in the river and not think it's worthless.
Correct.
But to somebody in New York City, they'd look at it and say, that's worth $40 million.
Right, but like you said, Federal Reserve notes is not money, right?
Congress has limited the use of Federal Reserve notes for military necessity only. It acts identical to the greenback and the continental dollar. It was never supposed to be introduced into society.
Okay, and
that's
how is
why
cryptocurrency is looked at?
Because you've entered into a contract with cryptocurrency. But see, Federal Reserve notes are regulated by congressional written law, and that written law clearly says in 1913 that it was introduced back into society or back into the United States military system for military necessity only. So if we ever have a war, the Federal Reserve note was supposed to be used to gather all that's needed to win the war, just like greenbacks and the continental dollar was.
Mm.
That's the only time they were allowed to use it. They're not supposed to be using it for any other purposes.
And according to 12... Go ahead.
And that's why the bank will never show up on a debit card. Bank will never show up to defend a debit card or a credit card.
Well,
because they can easily be called to. I was in court once, and I said, "Has Congress given you permission to use that?" And the judge said I couldn't ask those questions. He did not want anybody talking about that in the court. But go ahead.
Yeah, I was just thinking about that because here we got Fritz wants to ask a question. Go ahead, Fritz, unmute yourself and ask.
Good evening, gentlemen. Fritz from Michigan here. Question to you guys, the panel. What is the difference between a jury trial and a trial by jury? Are they different or are they one and the same?
It's not so much the language of the lining of the term. It's which courtroom are you in? If you're in an administrative courtroom, the jury acts administratively. If you're in a common law courtroom, the jury is the determiner of the law and the facts, and nobody else. That's the distinction. But yeah, I do search out the definition in the Bill of Rights. I use the exact language of the Bill of Rights when I ask for a common law proceeding, and I quote the Bill of Rights pursuant to the Bill of Rights. But you're right; they do switch them around, and but the key is to when you want the default jurisdiction on American soil is common law. They have to produce evidence that it's not common law, and it is to be moved to the administrative court. All U.S. courts are administrative. and they have to have the evidence to prove that. The judge cannot prove that for them. The judge will always try to, but you always want to shut it down and say, Your Honor, if you're producing evidence for the court, you need to take your robe off and swear yourself in, and he'll stop doing that right away. Does that help answer your question?
Just
So we can help
amazing
you.
how
We
you
can help
come
you
up
with
with these
that.
answers. It's great. It's amazing.
Yeah, the secret is to keep the burden proof on them. The Bill of Rights, they have to produce evidence that the Bill of Rights is not afforded to you. They have a United States court case. I need to find it. I misplaced it here recently. My friend said he has it, but it says that the United States citizen is not afforded the Bill of Rights. Okay, and that's because they're administrative. They're all under the administrative side, and you don't operate. You're not operating with rights on that side. You don't. They have the same language on that side, but it's under the discretion of the administrators. Not a good place to be.
And Paul, how do you know which one is coming at you at what point in time?
You have to ask them. You challenge personal jurisdiction. Personal jurisdiction is, what did I say, do, or sign for this court? What evidence? What does the plaintiff, the moving party, have that I said, did, or sign to grant this captioned court personal jurisdiction over me as a man? Exactly that language. Beautiful.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you.
And then you don't let the judge answer it. You do not let that judge answer it. You let you and as soon as the judge starts talking, you tell that judge to take his robe off, and if he gets belligerent with you, you ask him to recuse himself. And they'll usually recuse themselves at that point because they realize like they just really stepped into it big time. And then if he doesn't want to recuse himself, you just say, Your Honor, you realize that a U.S. Marshal can arrest you anytime you proceed without authority, and it's documented on the record. You just explain to him, if I bring a U.S. Marshal in here and he listens to the record and finds out that you intentionally disobeyed written law and violated a man's rights that are clearly constituted in the United States Constitution, you can be arrested by the U.S. Marshal. And the judge will usually look at you and say, I understand what you're saying. And then he'll rule in your favor. We used to bring in U.S. Marshals right into the courtroom, but all the United States Marshals in America have been told not to come in, which I think is a shame. They should be coming in anyway. But they used to cost like $1,600 a pop. It was expensive. But anyway, go ahead.
Okay, well, I got a question in the chat. Two questions. How did he say he referred to himself is the first question. The second question is, can you talk about Treasury assessment?
I don't know anything about Treasury assessment. When you're talking about Treasury assessment, are you talking about 1040 tax form?
Yeah, the IRS
coming.
Yeah, the IRS is giving you an assessment. I'm pretty sure.
Okay, yeah, there's two assessments. One of them is a 6203. The other one's like a 4920 or something like that. You can challenge those assessments, and they have to produce what they relied upon to produce those documents. Now, the most important thing is you challenge them to produce records that the Commissioner of Internal Revenue authorized them to require records from you, filing from you, or any monies from you. It has to start with the Commissioner of the Internal Revenue. Congress requires it. If they don't have that record, nobody after subsequent to that has authority to do any of those things. And that scares the heck out of them. But that's quite a dialogue. We can go into that some other time.
Yeah, he was talking about.
If you don't do that just right, you get it all screwed up. So you got anybody with an IRS case we can go through that methodically, step by step.
Yeah.
There's Freedom of Information Acts that you go through, and you basically paint them into a very small corner.
Mhm. And by the way, folks, you know, he charges very little for the consultation. And if you want, you can give me a call and I can be on the call and listen to help support you. So, cause that's what I like to do. I like to support. I don't get involved in the cases really that much, but, I feel I'm a great asset. Anyhow, okay, we got lower hand on Chessman again. Go ahead.
Hey, so we are talking about proof that they may have that you're a U.S. citizen. Does having like a driver's license or certificate of naturalization or a
No,
passport?
no, none of that affects you. You can screw up your whole life, and it's not evidence that you're a United States citizen. But if you're in a courtroom and you say you're a United States citizen, the judge just goes, "Okay, I believe you," and that's the worst thing you could say, because he just took personal jurisdiction over you. And all United States citizens are required to pay taxes regardless of where they made the income, because you're perpetually domiciled in the District of Columbia. But anyway, if you go to the statutes of the United States citizen, it clearly says that there's only one way, and it says none other, to become a United States citizen. It's by oath, oath. It says there's only one way and none other except by oath. I think is almost exact way it says it. And you just quote them that when they ask you if you're a citizen, you just say, "I have no evidence that I've ever elected to become a United States citizen," and then you can reference that, and you can just say, "I'm aware of the United States statute, blah 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 blah," and they'll just stare at you like, "Oh boy, get this guy out of the courtroom."
Yeah, I'm not born here, but I was naturalized. But I remember, taking an oath in San Francisco, right? The oath of citizenship,
Okay,
I remember doing that.
Yeah, there's ways that you can challenge that. I've been told. I've never done it yet, but God gives you you have a God-given right to travel upon his domain, right? How can a group of people say you can't come into this domain? God says you can travel anywhere as long as you do no man harm. So how can the United States stand there and say, "Hey, if you come in here, you owe us a third of what you make"? I think if it's not biblical, it's unconstitutional. And I think we could win a case on that. Another example to look at it: people get dragged into court for child support, dividing the assets because of a marriage license. If you were not on government land when you sought the driver's license too, but we're talking about marriage license here. That marriage license was never operative. You were not eligible for it. You did not qualify for it. They might have gave you one, but it was never operable. So that defaults you back to common law. And the administrative judge doesn't have the authority to require alimony from you, anything. So, but anyway, if you ever get somebody that's in that position, just contact us and we'll give them the brief on how to challenge jurisdiction of that.
Okay. Let's see. Phil had his hand raised first, so Phil, take it away.
Hey, I appreciate you answering the question on the assessment. I think what I was really talking about though was a determination from the Treasury. I have some friends that got a letter from the IRS, and this was a while back, and they wrote to the Treasury to get, I think it was called a determination letter of a deficiency. And the Treasury wrote back and basically said they did not have any deficiency. And I guess the answer is that nobody has a deficiency when you're dealing with the Treasury. But they were actually they actually opened a court case in federal court against the IRS, and the IRS backed down immediately. But they did not pursue it. I'm kind of disappointed they didn't pursue the case, because I'd like to see the IRS go down in a big way, just because of all the fraud that they're and the harm they're doing to people. But yeah, I was wondering if you had any comments on that, about the determination letter from the Treasury, and about any deficiency. That's something you're familiar with.
Yeah, anytime anybody determines that you owe them money, they are subject to being subpoenaed to a court and sworn in, and they have to give what they relied upon to do whatever they did. So anyway, that's how that works. So it's just the common law principle that if you say something, you better be willing to testify under oath that is true and give the evidence, because you're personally commercially liable for everything you say. If you're not protected by your official office, then you're personally commercially liable. And if you're operating outside of your office, which let's say an IRS agent comes after you and he taxes an activity that wasn't in internal revenue in the United States, he has no authority to do that to you. So he's personally liable for all the damage that he's caused you personally. IRS is not there to cover for him. He never had any authority to do it. So IRS just sends him out the door and says, you're on your own. We've done that before, and the IRS paid for the guy's perpetual vacation to a non-extradition country, because they didn't want him testifying.
Okay, we got John coming, lowering your hand. John, go ahead.
What evidence does the government have that you have taken an oath of office, or an oath to be a citizen of the United States?
They when somebody comes in from Mexico, which is the majority of them, you go through a class, and they tell you what you're going to do, and they clear you, and then you're qualified to stand up and take the oath. You sign a bunch of papers. You take the oath on camera, and they keep those records perpetually. That's the evidence that you've elected to become a United States citizen. Now, we had an individual. I talked to him right at the beginning. His name was Ed Shell. He was in law school, and the Vietnam War broke out, and they tried to draft him. Either he was between schools or something like that. But anyway, they tried to draft him and his friends. And he went down there because they drafted him, and he went down there to get sworn in, and his friends were there, and or at least people he knew that went to law school too. And he's seen them in the back row. And anyway, they said, stand up and raise your right hand, take 2 steps forward. So he stood up and raised his right hand, took 2 steps forward like everybody else in the room except his 2 friends in the back. They stood up and took 2 steps backwards and laid against the back of the wall. And they went up and tried to threaten them to do it, or they're going to be in big trouble. And they, I don't know if they hollered at him or not, but they threatened him for a while. Then they took him into another room. He got sworn in, and off to Vietnam he went for a couple of years. And he got back and he hunted those guys down. He says, whatever happened to you guys? I never heard a thing about it. And he says, oh, they threatened us for about another 45 minutes, and then we went home. What? You went home? He says, yeah, it's contract. All relationships with the United States is by contract. Contract. He says, oh, that's why they had us raise our right hand and say that. Contract. Yeah. I mean, I didn't have to contract with them? No. They can't make no American go to the United. They can't make no man go to war for them. Now, if you're already a United States citizen and you don't want to go to war for them, they can throw you in jail or send you back to your country. But if you're American born, they can't make you. They just send you home.
Isn't that that's
So
the
Elvis,
that's the Ziggy Brothers incident? We studied that with George Gordon, and he said that we
I don't
studied
know, but
it violates the 13th Amendment. There's never been a draft in this country. Everything is by contract.
well, see, a United States citizen. Remember, I said that's a franchise. That's a contract. So, but if you're American born and there's no existing contract. So anyway, they don't have a leg to stand on. So you just keep your hand down and stay against that back wall.
Because
even a state driver's license, you're required to be a United States citizen. It says right on the form. I was in court once, and the judge said, "You better get a driver's license. The next time you come into this courtroom, if you don't have a state driver's license, I'm sending you to jail." I show up in court a couple weeks later. He says, "You got a state driver's license?" I said, "No, sir." But I did study the form, and it says I have to mark the box that I'm a U.S. citizen in order to get me one. And if I do that, I'd be committing perjury, Your Honor. Are you going to force me to commit perjury? Are you authorized to do that? He says, "What are you talking about, Mr. Hansen?" He says, "Well, get the form out. Take a look." He says, "Bailiff, give me a copy of the Nebraska driver's license." He brings it out here and he looks at it. He calls me back up. He says, I never knew this, Mr. Hansen. Have a good day." That was cool.
I actually have the one for Illinois that states exactly what you said. It's in the Illinois Vehicle Code. It says only federal citizens need require a driver's license.
Yep.
Well,
go ahead. Because you're going to be driving on the driver's license is permission to drive on their land and do a commercial activity on their land. Same way as the state fishing license. It's permission to fish on their land commercially. You can go on their land and throw a string in the water and fish and feed your family, but you can't do it commercially. So, but go ahead.
I'm like the only officer in Chicago who reads the Illinois Vehicle Code, and it implicitly says it right there. It's only for federal land.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, I got another question here. Chessman again, I'm lowering your hand. Go ahead.
All right. Final question for me. Dealing with credit cards, the banks that you said they won't show up to court. Have you won any cases where they have to prove that they, abided by the contract and really loaned you money?
The Supreme Court has already ruled that a bank cannot lend its credit. Okay, so, and the Federal Reserve dollar is all credit. You're not allowed to lend it. The banks don't want anybody to know that, and that's why a bank will never go into a court setting. They'll always sell it to a debt collector for about 14 to 17%. Now, when the debt collector shows up, you force them to testify how much they paid for the debt, because they're trying to claim $100,000 when they only paid $17,000, $14,000, or $17,000 for it, and that's a crime. And they don't want to go to jail. And you just explain to them lightly that you guys really want to go to jail over this? We've had banks walk up to us. We were challenging foreclosures, and they said, we asked them, why did you back off on this thing? This is nobody in the office wanted to go to jail. Pretty interesting.
Okay, I got a couple questions. One is, Chappie, can you ask Paul about his method for stopping property tax?
That goes into a lot more detail than we can cover. But you have a right to own property. You have a right, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Okay, so when you bought land, you bought it as is. Okay, now as is might have a nexus with the United States on it that causes a taxable activity, but most land does not have that. So we go through a step-by-step process. I worked with a guy that he said that he's taken $30 billion of land off of tax rolls, 30 billion. And he was explaining how federal judges sealed the cases. He said he had one case for $10 billion, big section of land in Orange County, California, and it was highly developed part of Los Angeles. And it was taken away from the people like 25 years prior to that for taxes. What they did is the city of Los Angeles looked over the hill and said, you know, we're going to build that way. We want that land. And the other people go, that's just a desert. We want that land. They knew what they were going to do. So they raised the taxes so high that the people lost the land. So they went back in 25 years later. This guy, this non-attorney lawyer, and wrote a brief, and the judge says, I agree with the brief. I agree with the land patent or the land grant, I think, in California, and I'm going to award the people, I think it was $650 million every year the rest of their lives. I mean, perpetually.
Wow.
And then it's adjusted for inflation. And then the judge says, I recommend that the plaintiffs allow this case to be sealed because your lives are in danger. They will kill you. I talked to a friend that worked with a bunch of land out there that they took from farmers, and the neighbor said that the farmers chained themselves to the tree and they just went in and bulldozed it over and killed the farmers. The people watched it.
Wow.
Terrible.
Like Waco.
They chased everybody. Yep, they chased everybody off and they just killed the people.
Yeah. Okay, we got another question. Please ask Paul, is Title 8 USC 1448, and it says oath of renunciation and allegiance. The statute, is that the oath which he is referring? I guess that's like back in the Army. Yeah.
It sounds like it, but I'm not for sure. But it sounds like it. It should say in there close to the bottom. It should say oath and none other. If it has that language in there, then that's the one. By oath and none other.
Yeah. And
the only way you can become a United States citizen is associated with taking the oath.
Yeah. It's like Barbara said in the comment about the bulldozing of the farmers. What? Wait, did that really happen? Yeah, well, yeah, it happened. And don't forget Waco. I mean, if anybody, I mean, Waco, look at all the children they killed. I mean, and it's funny, you brought it up and it reminded me that when, I find no evidence, that in my possession. I remember the Attorney General, the Dyke at the time, Janet Reno, saying, I've seen no evidence, because they were after her. And that's what she kept saying. I haven't seen any facts or evidence or any documentation on that yet. And next question. So,
yeah,
that's they use it all the time.
If you go into a U.S. court, let's say it's an IRS case, and this is what we coach our clients. If you're in court and they ask you if you're a U.S. citizen, if you say yes, you lose your case. If you say no, you lose your case. Both are a statement. Both of them, they can say, prove your statement. But if you say, I have no evidence in my possession that I ever elected to become, maybe I was drunk one night. I don't remember, but do you guys have any evidence? Because that's certainly something that's documented. That's just as documented as much as a land patent, conveyance of land. So Do you have any evidence that that land has a nexus for taxation through the state written laws? I was in court on property tax, and the judge just kept asking me if my property was taxable. I kept saying I have no evidence, and she just kept asking me. She said, "You can't. That's not an answer. You got to say yes or no." I said, I don't want to make a statement on that. Maybe there is a tax out there somewhere as a matter of law or contract. There's two ways to tax your land. It's either as a matter of law or contract. So the U.S. courts have jurisdiction over both of them.
Okay, we got Coach B. I'm going to lower your hand, Coach. And then we got a question in the chat again. Go ahead, Coach.
Paul, I know you've answered this, but I just need it plain. So since I'm not a U.S. citizen, but I'm born in the United States.
You never say you never say that, but you know what you know. Or there's no evidence that you are. That's where we're at. Okay, go ahead.
Perfect.
Because you might have been in a coma. You might be in a coma and you don't remember. You know.
That is correct.
But okay,
that
go
is
ahead.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So, since there is no evidence that I am a United States citizen, what would I be classified as? That's my question.
State national.
National?
If you're born in Nebraska, if you're born in Nebraska, you're state national.
Okay, got it.
And to be a state national in Nebraska is the same as being a state national in any other any other land in America. And the word national means just people. You're a state people. And the word state there isn't state of from the word state in the statute in statutes always refers to a possession or territory of the United States. But you're referring to a state of people, free and independent people. But you don't have to explain that to them. And that's why you never make a statement. You don't have to make a statement that you're a state national, because as soon as you do it, you have to prove it. You don't have to do that. Just keep the burden of proof on them; they'll go away. Can I see your driver's license? I don't have any evidence that I'm required, eligible, or qualified to have a state driver's license. I don't care if you got one in your pocket. You still don't have any evidence that you're eligible, required, or qualified to have one, even if you have it in your pocket.
That's interesting. Okay, I got a next question. Martha. Oh, every time I say her name, I think of the Bible. Martha. Anyhow, Martha wants to know, please ask, in purchasing land, there is no address on the deed.
Yeah, we always help them. We help them identify the property and make a clear statement that this is not a contract for any taxes associated with the state of California or whatever. And then when you use any term that's associated with city, county, or state, you always put an asterisk by it, or a number with a circle around it, and then you define the term down below.
No, what I'm actually saying is this: since there is no address on your deeds, you decide what your address is. So they only have coordinates on the deed, and we're the ones. If you buy a house or any land, there's nothing on there. It's just a bunch of where they surveyed it.
Yeah.
So you're the one who put down where you live. You don't have to put that down there. You won't be taxed if you don't.
Well, no, not necessarily.
You won't. Where are they gonna send it to if there's no address?
We send documents to them immediately when you file that. You file it. It's filed in a special way. There's two different types of filing in their system. Okay, we have a process that we file it so it does not go to the tax rolls unless evidence that it's required to. And then we contact the there's one individual that's supposed to put a statement together, an affidavit together, stating what land is taxable in his jurisdiction, and we force that person to either put up or shut up. He has to do the investigation to see if it's taxable. The government can only tax their own land as a matter of law. They can tax any land they can convince somebody to contract with them under, but as a matter of law, they can only tax their land. You can only charge me rent on your land.
But they don't
that
own
you
that
own.
land. They don't own it. So
we don't know. They might own it. You never say they don't own it. You say, do you have any evidence that you have taxing? It's called taxing authority.
okay.
Anybody that sends you a letter that there's a tax due, we have a process of contacting them and forcing them to produce the evidence under sworn in a sworn fashion what they relied upon that land is taxable, and they have to do it as a matter of law. If they don't respond to you, send them another one. If they don't respond to you, send them another one, and then you drag them into court.
All right.
And you drag them into court. You drag them into a court in their personal capacity. You don't drag them in as the county assessor.
Okay.
Boy, they get nervous. They get real nervous. we had one county assessor, man, he was just sweating, man. He's sitting there like, you're right. That means I'm charging the vast majority of the people in this county fraudulently.
Yeah.
The police?
Well, I would love to be there. Okay, look, this is we're past the hour. We're an hour and a half, and so I'm going to call it a night. And I'd like to thank everybody for coming on the call. Next week we have a tax court expert, and you'll watch for your email and everything else. And Mike, let's see, Mike from Oregon, I believe he is. My understanding is one of a dual citizenship of state and the Union of States is as complicated under the Constitution of the U.S. It is okay. Thanks. Okay, wait. Don't put anything in the chat yet, because I can't. My eyes are hard to focus. Under the Constitution for the United States, it is one, of course, presumed the allegiance, even at that old level yet. Even that old level yet, there still seems to be this. Wait a minute, I can't. There's a thing in my way. Okay, level. There still seems to be this thing of United States citizen under the 14th Amendment, which could argue doesn't change the original meaning of the U.S. American citizenship. Any comment?
Are you asking me?
Yeah. I mean, is there any comment about the dual citizenship?
Yeah, you can have dual citizenship. Citizen means subject. When you join the military, you're subject to the military during that term. So you're subject to God. You're subject to your family. You're subject to your wife. You're subject to your church. You're subject to the government and military. So there's dual subjection, servanthood in many ways in life. So yeah, that's certainly possible. Citizenship, being subject, I can offer myself to be your servant the rest of my life contractually. It's a contract. So yeah. Some people write a contract with Satan. That's not going to end well. But anyway, it's contract, and you can't, I cannot contract with you to kill me because the government says there's certain principles for, adultery and stuff. You can't contract to violate God's law and expect that you're protected by the contract. Doesn't work that way. But anyway, there's dual everything out there pretty much.
Yeah. Okay. Well, again, like I said, next week we got look for your emails about Lynn Sayer Venable. He's a tax expert, been around a long time, and a great guy to talk to, and he'll explain, and he's helped a lot of people out. So there's always different ways to do different things. So when you're fighting corruption, you need to be articulate, and the more you know, the better off you are. But the less you say protects you a lot more than answering questions.
Yes, we've never lost a tax case, and keeping the burden of proof on them is the only way we've been able to win every time. If you do anything other than that, you're getting yourself in big trouble. But and you can do that. You can do that. You can do a process of using their material if you're very careful about it. But you have to keep the burden of proof with them at every step. Otherwise, you're going to get boxed in as being considered only a taxpayer can argue the tax code. The Supreme Court has said that. You don't want to go in there arguing the tax code. Not going to end well generally. Okay, I got to go too.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, and I don't have a website yet. I'm working on getting it done soon. It's only been 3 years or so it should be sooner than that. But you can email me to get on my email list for those that are not on it. And I'm putting my email in the chat, but it's American Liberties. That's TIES at the end, .llc@gmail.com. And you can go ahead and email me, and if you can ask any questions, I may take a day or so before I answer it. Other than that,
God bless America, and this call is officially over.
Okay, very good. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, guys. Good night, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.